the subtitle of this, like your bumper stickers ought to read, "Stuff Happens." They're going to have bumper stickers that say, "Trust us." So, in the first one, US DOT created PHMSA in 2004 to look out for us. They collect data of pipeline incidents. New studies on the statistics from PHMSA show that there is a high risk, high-profile pipeline incidents like fires, explosions, spills, and it's real. It's not hypothetical. It's real. This map, it's hard to see here. I wish it were bigger, but it's scary. Those are the incidents that have occurred from 1986 to 2013. And you notice there's a lot of black, red, and blue on there. And where it's white, there isn't anything but government property and antelopes. So it's happening in areas where there are people. Statistics reveal that in the past year and 4 months, 372 leaks. I'm not going to read all this to you. In other words, statistics show significant incident every 30 hours. Now, what is a significant incident? Here are some examples. The first one is in Sissonsville, which is in West Virginia. Now, Sissonsville is a major metropolis compared to Union and Peterstown. I'm sure they can find Sissonsville with a GPS. My ups guy has trouble finding where I live. So if they're going to use GPS to get from their headquarters here, they're going to have a problem. They don't even know where Monroe County is if you're north of Charleston. There was a 20-inch diameter pipeline, there we go, in Sissonsville. It exploded on December 11th, 2012. You can read, that's the explosion. You can read the next screen. 1,000 feet long flame, 15-foot crater from a 20-inch pipeline. That next. Are we going forward? Hold it now. Two years later, NTSB said the rupture and explosion was caused by a corroded pipeline that hadn't been inspected for 20 years in Sissonsville, close to where they're starting this pipeline. In San Bruno, California, a 30-inch diameter gas line exploded. Not as big as ours. Okay. 30-inch diameter, 1,000-foot high wall of fire. 8 people killed, 66 injured. That's an earthquake. You can't read that. Into the atmosphere, 47+ million tons. $72-foot long crater, 26 feet high. Then let's compare that to the 20-inch pipeline that had a, I think it was a 15-foot deep crater, okay. And this interested me. A big section that weighed over 3,000 pounds, about the size of a Volkswagen, was blown out of the crater. Now, that would mess up Wheel of Fortune if your Volkswagen landed in your Barca lounger while you were watching Wheel of Fortune. You know, that's not a pretty sight. Here's the total: 8 dead, 66 injured, seriously. 38 homes burnt to the ground, 70 seriously damaged homes. And 4 years later, they're still recovering and rebuilding. Missed one. The NTSB said that it took 90 minutes response time to stop the flow of the gas. 90 minutes. That's in Sissonville, highly populated area. They said it was excessively long, and it contributed to the extent and severity of the damage. A 90-minute response time. Is that going to happen in Monroe County? Federal investigators, 167-foot crater caused by defective welds. 3,800 violations, regulations, and standards set by state and federal law. 3,800 violations. Next. Pacific Gas and Electric was accused of lying to federal investigators. They were charged with obstruction of justice. Next. It showed that the grand jury found that they were not only slowing the investigation, but providing false and misleading information. How about 2015? That's a little hard to read, but look at the list of what's happened in 2015. This is March. We were only talking a few months. By the end of January, there were 5 major pipeline ruptures. 2015. Here's one in Brooke County. That was a 1-year-old pipeline. It was a 20-inch diameter in a rural area. The fire burned for 5 hours. Now, what about our emergency response capabilities if this happens? Well, in a letter to the editor in the Watchman, Jerry Brown, chief of police there in Peterstown, he said that if a gas pipeline this large, 42 inches, were to fail and explode, our local emergency people are completely unable to respond except to clean the immediate area and watch it burn. What a relief. Now, Mr. Brown knows his capabilities. I don't think anybody's going to come from north central West Virginia down here in 90 minutes to save Monroe County when there's a rupture. How about the blast radius? It's kind of interesting. It's measured in feet. The blast radius is measured in feet from the epicenter. So that's like a pizza. When you run your cutter across the pizza, the distance across is the diameter. The radius is half of that. And the explosion from a 42-inch line will cause 1,155-foot blast radius. That's 4 football fields. That's the radius. The diameter would be 8 football fields across. Well, I don't know how many football fields it is from here to the monument out there, but I bet it's not 8. That's a big chunk of property. Some more data on the blast radius. In addition, there's a blast zone. It's measured in square feet. The blast zone, look at this number. That's 4 million square feet. And in addition to the blast zone, there's a firestorm zone, the area that would be burned. people's lives in danger, houses would be in danger, wildlife would be in danger. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's not just that little radius that they're going to talk about. And in conclusion, that's a good one. In conclusion, next one. Pipelines are a constant and increasingly frequent threat to the public safety. The people seeking to ban the extraction and transportation aren't just a bunch of cranks trying to be contentious and anti-business. There are real dangers involved in terms of public safety and other considerations. You've already heard me talk about that. We can see this in this section. The cost to human and natural resources is high, very high, perhaps too high. Thanks.
The place where my wife and I live, just outside the city limits of Peterstown, a few feet. In 1941, there was an easement granted for a gas line through that property, a 4-inch line. It was put in 46 to 47. In 1968, a 6-inch line went through the same property, alongside, parallel. About 2 years ago, we were approached by some landmen about putting an 8-inch line through it. Since there was already an existing right-of-way, there was very little we had to say one way or the other. We had some input, and they did look at some of the input and ignored most of it. About this time last year, they came over through the yard and drove up 40-some stakes with little bright-colored flags on them. My wife took these little plastic Easter eggs and stuck them on all the flags. It was real decorative for a while. A couple of guys came through wanting to put up this orange plastic barrier fence, kind of like cattle can eat. You know what I'm talking about, Bill. She ran them off. She said the grandkids are not going to try to hide Easter eggs out here in the yard with all that fence in the yard. Well, that worked for a time. But they eventually came back and put the fence up. But let me tell you something about if you have a gas line come through your property, you're not going to be able to converse with 99% of these people because they don't speak your language. They're not local people that's been hired to put in the pipeline because we don't have any local people that have that kind of experience. Some of them can speak English and they can understand it, but they won't let you know it. So the project was scheduled to begin about the 1st of July. And it did. On the 1st of July, they showed up with all the equipment. And they said the pipeline would take approximately 2 weeks to install. It was going right up the middle of the driveway. Not to worry, they said, you'll have full access to your garage all the time. We'll see to that. And we'll be done with the pipeline on your property in about 2 weeks' time. Well, within 2 weeks, they had the pipe in the ground. As soon as they got it in the ground, they pulled the crew off somewhere else. We didn't have access to the garage except for being able to walk up to the entrance door from the back of the house. We had to park the vehicles that we wanted to use on the state right-of-way. The driveway was in a constant state of mud. They'd put gravel in, and then they'd run their equipment over and sink the gravel in the mud again. And then they'd attempt to fix it and churn up more mud. Well, when they came back to put the line across Chimney Ridge behind the house, beginning at the property line going across. They worked approximately, 2 weeks on the ridge. Before they put it across the ridge, where they had bored under the road in front of the house, they was going to tie that in with what was over on Mill Hill. They spent 48 hours with a hammer on an excavator cutting the bedrock through Ridge Creek. This is not, we quit at 5 o'clock, come back at 9. 48 straight hours, constant. When they got that in, they pulled the crews again. Then they came back and went to Chimney Ridge, and they put the line to the top of the ridge. Well, in order to get the pipe to the ridge, they had to go up my driveway. There went the driveway again, no access. In the process of hauling pipe up the ridge, one of their out of the U.S. truck drivers put a whole semi-load of gas pipe in on top of my sewer. You know what happened then? Everything was reversed. The sewer went from subterranean to top of the ground. Took over a week to get that fixed. They said, don't have any of your grandkids or anything playing in the yard while that's exposed. Wouldn't hurt us, mind you. Probably wouldn't hurt our kids, but it might hurt the grandkids. That still isn't completely rectified. We've got soil in there that still hadn't settled. You can't walk through it. Everybody knows how wet it is. The gas company didn't bring the snow and the rain, but they left all that subsoil on top of the ground that won't drain. It just, everything sits right on top of it. You can't walk through it now. Well, when they got the line up Chimney Ridge, they left again, pulled the crew to another area, didn't put in water breaks, didn't seed, straw, nothing. We got major rains. Started the first day of the fair. Everybody in the county knows how that works. We had a solid sheet of mud that went all the way across the yard, down the driveway, across the road, down the hill, and into Rich Creek. The road, you couldn't tell it was an asphalt road. Still can't. All of it hadn't washed away yet. So after a period of 2 or 3 weeks, they came and looked at all this. Yeah, we shouldn't have done that. Mm-hmm. There are no accidents, there are incidents. Somebody did something stupid. They got the water bars put in, took care of that problem. About halfway past the French drain I had above the garage to prevent the bank from caving in. You've seen a lot on the news about cave-ins from cutting the earth away where you shouldn't cut earth away. You can see the results of it. One lady was killed. So we got the problem of a sinkhole opening up in the middle of the driveway. About 4 feet across, dropped about 10 inches. Just looked like a miniature version of the Corvette Museum in Kentucky. So they came and fixed that with a sledgehammer and more gravel. I don't understand the process, but oddly enough, it worked. So we're still waiting until the weather clears, the ground dries. I've got the promise from the local Columbia guy that there's going to be topsoil put in place where it never was before, that was needed, it was stipulated. That there's going to be drainage provided, which we still got a lot of standing water in the yard. It shines in moonlight when there's a moon out. I heard it mentioned from the attorneys we spoke with at Landside a few weeks ago. If you do wind up having to allow a gas line through your property, at least try to make sure the paperwork you sign doesn't allow them to come back and expand right away at their convenience, that they at least have to go through the same process over again. It may work, it may not. They didn't give us any guarantee with it, but they did mention that you could try to have that included in the paperwork. But if anybody wants to see pictures, we've got them somewhere. How many? 400? Oh, okay. Got over 1,000 pictures, so we'll give you a comfortable chair and a cup of coffee while you look at it. But there's no way you can describe what it's like to have equipment running 20 feet from your bedroom window at the crack of dawn, and it goes till after dark, sometimes after 11 p.m., And this is in summertime, it's not in the winter. The construction crews were in our yard for 13 weeks. And this is every day. They work Saturdays, they work Sundays. Quitting time was when they sometimes couldn't see, way past. We've had headlights shining in the house windows at night. They would leave vehicles, even pickup trucks, all of them diesel, leave them sitting in the yard running for hours at a time. Nobody coming and going with them, just sitting there running. You got all that smell. Everybody that sits around a diesel truck running any length of time, you know how good that smells. There's no way to describe what it's like, but I will tell you this. If you ever have to experience it, it's something you will never forget. Thank you.